Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, flying solo. So this week has been a little bit jumbled up for me. I usually put out an episode or two earlier in the week, but let's just say that this week I had a bit of a home plumbing issue. So I've been dealing with a little bit of that. So I ended up recording an episode about Summer League, like summing up after the fourth and final Warriors Las Vegas game. I had an episode about that, but then before I could actually get a chance to turn that around and post and then upload it, JaMychal Green was signed by the Warriors, and then Mac McClung was signed to a non-guaranteed one-year deal. And so the episode talking about Summer League is going to come after this part. I want to talk about JaMychal Green, which I think is an awesome signing. I think it is exactly what Warriors fans like myself have wanted the front office to do. You know, looking at free agents that were left, nobody seemed to jump out as somebody that could kind of replace Otto Porter Jr. as that veteran forward who can, you know, shoot the three decently, rebound, and do a little bit of everything. Somebody who can fill that gap between the starting unit and the young guys like Jonathan Kuminga, Moody, et cetera, et cetera. So when JaMychal Green was bought out and everyone announced that he was going to sign with the Warriors, I was like, there you go. That's exactly the piece that the Warriors needed. And I'm happy because, you know, this whole time, this whole free agency period, people have been really, well, not everybody, but there is a very, very strange faction of Warriors fans that like really are just knee-jerk reacting to every single non-signing that the Warriors make, and every time that somebody that they want gets signed by another team. And it's strange because what they should understand is that this is a process and that this front office has gone through this several times. They've had some success and they've had lesser success, but usually they do the right thing. And that's why it's so weird to me sometimes where people are wringing their hands over losing a couple free agents. Yes, we get attached to them. Yes, they helped the Warriors and the fan base win a title, but the core, the championship core is still there, and the young lottery core plus Jordan Poole is still there. And then you have Andrew Wiggins, Kevon Looney, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, a lot of folks with every move that the Warriors didn't make, like letting go of Gary Payton II, Otto Porter Jr., Nemanja Bjelica, and let's be honest, a lot of those were easy to predict. If Gary Payton II got a better deal that was beyond the Warriors' set limits, they weren't going to match, especially at 3 years. And then with Otto Porter Jr., he came to the Warriors on a minimum. He was just coming to the Warriors to basically rehab his value, and he did that. And then Nemanja Bjelica, he saw the writing was on the wall, and he went back to Turkey where he played before. So it's one of those things where, you know, these guys, all of a sudden it's recency bias. Like everyone all of a sudden loved them and thought they were the most important players on the team. Again, not knocking what they did, but if you're just kind of being practical and looking at the situation, I mean, people were loving Nemanja Bjelica for quote unquote locking down Jason Tatum in the finals. But all those people, I almost guarantee you all those people were complaining about him throughout the regular season. Criticism is always deserved, but this kind of like manic back and forth is really strange to me sometimes. But again, that's hopefully like more of a sliver of Warriors fans out there, and the rest of y'all are a little bit more sane and measured, right? This front office has earned the right to have a little bit of cushion, a little bit, cut them some slack. You know what I mean? Like that their reputation should allow people to see how everything plays out. And then when all the dust clears, when all of it settles, look at the team that the Warriors front office has put together. And right now it's looking pretty decent. You know, they have, like I said, the vets, they have the young guys, they have the Wiggins, the Looney. They have Dante DiVincenzo. They have JaMychal Green. So they're starting to put those veteran role players, just kind of like guys who can come in and give you some solid minutes without worrying about, rookie mistakes or young guy mistakes. And then maybe, you'll sign Andre Iguodala if he decides to come back, right? I've always said I would love to have him back because the value that he brings to the vets, to the coaching staff, to the young guys is massive, right? So JaMychal Green, he is very, very similar to Otto Porter Jr. Maybe Otto Porter Jr. had more of a peak earlier in his career as a number 3 pick and as somebody who earned a pretty massive salary early on in his career. So that works perfectly for me. He can come in there, rebound, play defense, shoot the 3 sometimes here and there, a couple shots under the bucket, all that. You don't need him to do too much. Just play his role, fill that gap until Kuminga can come in and do it all the time, right? So that's cool. Love that. Mac McClung, the kid out of Summer League who didn't really pass the ball too much to James Wiseman, but he still averaged 4.8 assists, and he had some nice highlight plays. It was announced that he signed a non-guaranteed 1-year deal with the Golden State Warriors. And the interesting thing about that is because it's non-guaranteed, the Warriors could obviously cut him. It's more of something, as far as I understand, where Mac McClung does not want to be designated as a two-way player. Either I'm on the team or I move on. So he wants to control his destiny a little bit. If I'm wrong about that, please, somebody just message me and correct me, because that's what I've read and figured out from here. And it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see what he can do when he's in training camp. Maybe he'll be a little bit like Gary Payton and he'll wow people, right? As much as I was a Nico Mannion fan, like I've said in previous episodes, I think Mac McClung is a little bit tougher, and maybe Nico proves to be a little bit more of a pure point guard, but Mac McClung can obviously pass. He can obviously get to the basket. He can shoot decently from outside, and he just seems like a just tougher guy on defense, sturdier, maybe not taller, but willing to scrap and fight. And I'd love to see what comes out of that in training camp, what the reports are, what coaches say about him, because if he makes the squad, I will be very, very, very impressed. And, that would actually lead to a very, very entertaining garbage time team, to be honest. Him out there throwing behind the back passes, going up for fast break, 360 dunks or whatever, or windmills. I would love to see that. Another thing that came out today was that Bob Myers said that he thinks the Warriors are pretty much out of the Kevin Durant trade talks, and take that with a grain of salt, take that at face value if you want. But I am breathing a sigh of relief, largely because, as you know, I prefer not to have Kevin Durant come back. I prefer to have the Warriors' homegrown talent, the young guys, grow together and see how they evolve. That's just how I am. That's what I think most pure, true fans really love to see, because you really feel like that connection with these young guys coming in at like 19 years old and then seeing them progress and grow. It's one of the best things to me about being a sports fan, a basketball fan, a Warriors fan in general. So if KD is just not coming, great. We could put all those rumors to rest. There's still a bunch of people out there who are adamant that, KD is going to come to the Warriors. But I mean, at this point, it's not even worth talking about. I've talked about this before, that if it is going to be KD, then, hopefully the Warriors don't give up the house. I'll take what Bob Myers has said and just leave it at that. Steph Curry hosting the ESPYs. I didn't get a chance to watch those, but I saw clips online and, I thought he did decent. I was a little nervous for him with his delivery and how he would be. But, outside of like being a little wonky reading off of a teleprompter, but good for him, and good for him for, I guess, building out his brand as a media guy, right? He has his whole film company, Unanimous, and he has his interests. He has Holy Moly, all that stuff. So I think it's good for him, and I'm curious to see. I'm curious to see what a lot of these, basketball stars do in media. Of course, there's Steph, and then there's LeBron James with Spring Hill Entertainment. And then you have guys like Draymond, who has a contract with NBA on TNT, obviously has his own podcast. And then Andre Iguodala with Point Forward, his own podcast. So a lot of these guys are getting out there, and cool, I'm a fan of those guys. I'm curious to see what they produce and what they create. And, good on Steph for putting himself out there and having a little fun this summer. And I guess Steph also just being more of the showman that he's shown to be on the court. All right, so that is the latest update. This next part, after the swoosh, is the episode I recorded talking about Summer League, Wiseman, Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and just how overall they looked and what I hope to see from them moving into training camp and preseason and the regular season. Also, I talk about Kevin Durant, who, as I just said, Bob Myers says is not really in the cards for the Warriors at this point. But I do talk about like what I would, I guess, give up for him if it were to come to fruition, assuming that Bob Myers wouldn't be foolish enough and Joe Lacob wouldn't be foolish enough to give up the house, the future house, for KD. So here we go. Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, flying solo. I just wanted to talk a little bit, finally, now that Summer League is officially over, just kind of sum it up, And to me, Summer League, it was a huge success, right? And I say that because the most important thing for me was that James Wiseman played 4 games, and as far as we know, he's 100% healthy, no complications with the knee, no setbacks, nothing like that. So to me, I don't really care about anything else. That in and of itself, tips the scales in terms of it being a success. Now, we've talked about some of the games that happened, and just looking at Summer League as a whole, like James Wiseman in particular, right? There's some positives, he's definitely better on defense, not perfect. Don't get me wrong. But I've said this before, he's a lot better with his rotations. He's much better at staying straight up, arms up. He's 7'1" with that massive wingspan. He doesn't need to put his arm, like reach over somebody or go for pump fakes. He still does sometimes, but that's how he gets into foul trouble. That's how guys like pump fake and go by him for easy buckets. So he's clearly internalized some of those teachings before. So that's 100% something in the right direction. A lot of times the point guards or whoever was supposed to play point, like Mac McClung, I mean, I've said this already, like guys in Summer League, just like in the G League, are they're looking out for their own, right? They're trying to get either the Warriors or some other team that needs them interested in their services. So they're trying to get onto big league contracts. They're trying to get onto two-way contracts, all that stuff. At certain points, Mac McClung did pass James Wiseman the ball. And at those points, James Wiseman caught the ball. So again, that's something that he had problems with, the heebie-jeebies with the hands. But to me, from what I saw, his hands looked fine. He was catching passes that were, in his face, in his chest. Yes, sometimes bounce passes are a little bit too low, and because he's so tall, like those, he can't get to those. But overall, in general, those are positive signs. And his shooting stroke looks good. I've always said, on his 3-point shot that, like, for a guy who is 7'1", he has a bit of a windup, right? It's not like a traditional jumper. It's more of like, he coils down and it takes a while to get that shot off. So I wonder if over time they'll adjust that a little bit in order to make sure that he gets that shot off quicker. I mean, he's super tall, so he's probably used to people not being able to guard that or block that. But, it's something to keep an eye out on. And, his stroke looks fine, just needs more reps. And honestly, that's kind of a theme, like, especially with him, just reps, 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 healthy reps, move on with his development instead of just rehabbing and making sure the knee is okay. I don't tend to compare him at this point to LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards, right? I mean, that's going to follow him as long as he plays basketball. I mean, the same way DeAndre Ayton and Marvin Bagley III, they have Trae Young and Luka Doncic drafted after them, right? So, it is what it is, but forget it, right? If those guys, if Melo and Anthony Edwards missed as many games their first two seasons as James Wiseman did with an injury, then I mean it'd be a very, very similar case. But just for all intents and purposes, you just have to look at Wiseman as an individual, who he is, and just look at his progression, look at his progress. Yeah, what if he didn't get hurt? What if he went stronger with that dunk and Kenyon Martin Jr. didn't get up there and block his shot and force Wiseman to the ground? Like, I always felt that dunk that he got injured on, he was actually kind of soft on it, but you just can't do anything about the past. And you just want to be sure that whatever trajectory he's on now, that it continues to improve. I was talking to or texting with Vubang, who's on this show a lot, and he was saying to me that he thinks that Wiseman will have to spend a ton of time in the G League and maybe the whole season. And to me, like, that's a bit much. Right now, it's about getting him into training camp and seeing how he looks there. You know what I mean? It's like, we can make judgments right now, but what's the point? I think it's a question of seeing how he looks in training camp, in preseason, and listening to how the coaching staff, the front office talks about him, right? Because with James Wiseman, in 2020, after he got drafted, there was so much talk about how great he is and how athletic he is and how he's the best athlete and the fastest guy on the team back then, right? But ever since then, they've learned to manage expectations. And I expect to hear a lot of that expectation management. Yes, he might spend some time in the G League, but I don't think the whole season, as long as he's healthy. I think that he is definitely worthy of having backup center minutes behind Kevon Looney. And I think that the Warriors would definitely prefer him to be around the big league club, especially after missing a whole season and a half pretty much, and get him used to that environment and the team and the players, et cetera, et cetera. Putting him back in the G League, who knows? Who knows what happens to him there? He might get some reps. I mean, maybe when they're back in the Bay, they send him down to the G League if he's not looking like he's playable in certain situations. But I think he will be. I hope that he will be. I'm a big Wiseman believer. But when it comes down to it, it's like, I said this about this past season, right? The Warriors are pretty much on a different rhythm and trajectory than other teams. This is how it was during the first several years of the dynasty. It's not about like, yes, you want to win as many games as possible and you want to secure the highest seeding possible. But as I said all last season, like, it's about being prepared for the playoffs, right? We saw that, getting healthy for the playoffs, getting the young guys and the new guys acclimated to those big bright lights environments. So to me, Wiseman, it's not a question of him being ready by the All-Star break, right? Or even by the Christmas Day game, it's having him be ready for the playoffs. And I'm not talking about ready in terms of health, but ready, like, bring him along so that when you need him to chase another title, when it really matters, then Kerr, the coaching staff, the front office, they trust him enough. Okay, you're playable in the first round, second round, Western Conference Finals, in the finals. So his development isn't about showing that he is the world-beating number 2 pick on day one. It's about helping this team win a title, doing the things that this team needs him to do. This team has so much talent now. as opposed to when he got hurt, right? So they only need him to do some simple things and then build on that. So as long as he's healthy, I totally believe in what he can bring to the table. And he's entering technically his third year, so he's got to be watching for the next contract, right? For this rookie extension. So he's going to want to show out and prove that he's healthy and that he can contribute the way he knows how. You can see it during the summer league that he was getting frustrated not getting the ball, but also that he wants to be great. And I believe in that. So fingers crossed. Not making any predictions, but that's how I feel like the trajectory of things will go. That's what the Warriors need from him. Again, they need him to be big. They need him to block shots. They need him to rebound. They need him to be that vertical threat. If he can become that pick and pop guy, that would be amazing, but they won't need that right away. So, right now in the long run, he'll be fine. And it'll be good for him to work on his drills with real players, with guys on the team instead of random coaches or nobody like he did last season. He doesn't have to be a 20 and 10 guy. There's room for the Warriors to be patient. They need him to be honestly like a 12 and 8 guy when he gets minutes. You know what I mean? He'll be playing against second units for the most part, and those are his opportunities to dominate. And he'll be playing with guys, as opposed to Summer League and the G League, who can get him the ball, who know how to pass, who know the Warriors offense, and I think he will hopefully thrive sooner rather than later. Fingers crossed. But, I got positive vibes from him from Summer League. The action never ends at DraftKings Sportsbook, especially this summer. With tons of ways to bet on all your favorite sports, you can fuel your fandom and feel the heat of the season like never before. Plus, right now, DraftKings Sportsbook is giving new customers a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's right, make your first bet up to $1,000, and if it doesn't win, you'll get another shot to cash in. You can throw down on all the major actions for baseball, golf, MMA, and more. Plus, with same-game parlays, spreads, money lines, over-unders, and props, your betting options feel endless. I'm looking forward to all those Giants-Dodgers matchups because it's just one of the best rivalries in sports. So we'll see what the odds are for those. Best of all, DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Make your first deposit and get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code TBPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Jonathan Kuminga, as a guy on the ball in general, he got better. His shooting was still iffy here and there, and he's still working on his decision making. I said this last time, and it's still crazy to me that as of today, in 3 years, he'll still be younger than Jordan Poole is right now. So that's how young he is and how talented he is. And to show this stuff right now at his age, at 19, I mean, again, he reclassified. So last year technically could have been his senior year in high school, and this could be his freshman year in college. Let that set in for a second. I've said that Jonathan Kuminga's shooting stroke isn't broken, and it looked much better as the season went on last season, right? The coaching staff seemed to really fix whatever tweaks he needed in his shot. Summer League is way more inconsistent, maybe because he was forcing stuff, and also maybe because he was having like a quicker trigger. During the regular season, he would get a lot of shots off that were wide open threes. So he had a beat to set and really like secure his form. In Summer League, he was doing stuff off ball. He was jacking up shots like quicker, because there were guys on him more so than in the regular season when you have so many other shooters out there. So when you rush your shot, maybe it was kind of throwing his motion off just a little bit more than he's used to. So he's got to get in there, work on getting that shot off. And also, during the regular season a lot of his shots, a lot of his highlight plays were him moving without the ball, right? So he wasn't set and having to put a shake and bake move on anybody. So he's working on that. And, last season it was like a lot of him cutting to the basket or him going back door and going in for some crazy two-handed dunk where he almost hits his head on the rim. He can still do all those things, but he needs to develop his stuff with the ball in his hands. You can see the path they're taking with him in terms of him being more on ball and being more able to be a point forward and have that responsibility. So I love that they're developing that in him. Will we see that much during the regular season? Maybe, maybe second unit stuff, maybe garbage time stuff, who knows? Or maybe when he plays, they just use his strengths again and then slowly develop those other things. And in terms of his free throws, he shot overall pretty poorly in Summer League with his free throws. But again, I said this last episode, we know that he can hit free throws. It's just a question of getting the reps, taking his time, not overreacting to any of this stuff. And I tend to say this, and Aram in Toronto said this too. It's like, you don't want to take Summer League too seriously. And it's not a question of just looking at the good things and, being hyped on the good things and dismissing the bad things. Not at all. But in my time kind of doing this podcast and watching these players, you get an idea of what they're like a little bit and the trends. And I think in this situation, seeing that Wiseman can stay healthy, seeing what he's able to do when he gets the ball and how he is actively trying to improve in terms of rebounding, and seeing that with Kuminga, that despite some of his lesser moments, that he is aggressively taking on the leadership, the responsibility that the Warriors coaching staff has foisted on him, then, for him, Kuminga, those are those early growing pains of being that guy. So you have to take that into account, right? And with Wiseman, like I said, I was just looking for him to be healthy and to see if he still has that athleticism, has that bounce, and seeing that he has his stroke, whatever. All those things, those are all positives. Negatives, things that they can work on, are clearly, obviously there. Wiseman missed a year and a half, and before that, only played 39 NBA games and played 3 college games during 2020, right? So there's definitely things that need to be worked on. And with Kuminga, same as well. I've talked about some of those, his decision making, his shot, and also like his handle, right? I said early on that his handle tends to be a little bit out and high and away from his body. And so if he's going to be on ball more, he's going to have to get tighter with that, right? Especially if he's trying to get through tight spaces and double teams or splitting double teams and all that stuff. So those are the things that I'm looking for in training camp, in preseason, or whatever they're working on behind the scenes that maybe we'll see snippets of on social media, whatever. But that's where I stand with that. Moses Moody, I mean, that guy, again, he seems just ready to go. Lower ceiling probably than Wiseman and Kuminga, but plug and play, seems like a total professional. Looks at what the Warriors roster is right now, looks at where he fits in, and is exactly working on those things, whether it's playing good team defense, whether it's getting, scrappy garbage shots, whether it's being the guy in the corner hitting threes. Like, he is seemingly like knowing his role right now. Could he exceed the ceiling that people think he has? Maybe. Sure. Why not? We've seen on the Warriors, like, several guys exceed expectations, exceed like quote unquote athletic limitations. So, that's something. And Moody, of course, was the Summer League leading scorer. So props to him. I think it was a couple of big games that helped him along the way get that. But I'm very confident in him and what he could bring to the table, and him just adding more and more to his game. Everybody said last season that he just seems a lot older, a lot more mature than 19. And you can see that now, right? He just looks like he just, shows up with his briefcase, his metaphorical briefcase, goes to work, and then does what he's supposed to do, what he needs to do. the big question is, maybe this is a big question to some people, but to KD or not to KD? That is the question. I've talked about how I don't think the Kevin Durant trade to the Warriors is going to happen, but it's still obviously lingering because nothing is pressing. He signed to a 4-year deal with the Nets, so technically they don't have to trade him. I obviously don't want to give up the young dudes for Kevin Durant. We just won a title, the Warriors did, and I think that even though we've lost some vets, it's like, man, everything is working properly. Don't blow that up. Don't blow up this future. So there's a couple things, people are hypothesizing regarding Joe Lacob. It's like, oh, he loves KD, so of course he's going to go after him. But then there's the other side where it's like he loves the idea of bridging this dynasty and having the Warriors be title contenders for like another decade, another 15 years with these young dudes. So, I don't know, but which way do you look at it? To me, if the chatter continues, you're almost forced to think about what you would give up. And obviously Wiggins would have to be in there for salary purposes, just like last summer, just like when everyone was talking about Bradley Beal, Dame Lillard, Ben Simmons, Pascal Siakam, etc. So Wiggins would have to be in that. And then you assume that the Nets would want the young guys, picks, whatever. But for me, it's like, okay, if it's all the young guys, then that's ridiculous. And if it's a few of the young guys, if it's a couple of the young guys and future picks, then maybe, obviously I don't want to lose Jonathan Kuminga, James Wiseman, Jordan Poole, or Moses Moody, but there is some package there that could probably work for, my personal tastes as a fan. And that's the challenge. If this is actually real, if this actually has legs, is to find the best situation for the Warriors where they keep enough future talent for, years to come. And again, if it's anybody but Kuminga and Wiseman, then I wouldn't be so, my feathers wouldn't be so ruffled, I'll say. But I think what the Warriors have right now is very, very special, very, very unique. And I would love to run it with these guys and whatever vets they can find to fill out the free agency roster. That being said, it's like, I see people talk about how, if you get KD, then like you're going to repeat. And I think the Warriors still can definitely repeat as champions with who they have right now. But we'll see. We'll see where this goes. I mean, I think that with Kevin Durant, I personally, don't want to rehash that, but there is obviously the kind of basketball purist mentality of like just wanting to see that beautiful game with KD, Clay, Steph, Draymond all together, just to see that brand of basketball again. Do I definitely want it? No. If I want to see that brand of basketball, I could go watch highlights from those 3 years where Kevin Durant was. But if it does happen, then, that will be another unique thing to see. But again, if I had my druthers, stay solid, add some vets, develop the young guys, and, let's see this team evolve and grow organically from these guys that the Warriors have drafted, going from Steph, Clay, Draymond to Wiseman, Kuminga, Jordan Poole, Moses Moody, and then possibly some of the younger dudes, Patrick Baldwin Jr. and Ryan Rollins. So that's a lot of young dudes for sure. Again, I hope Andre Iguodala comes back. And I also hope that they can find some vets to just have not such a youth-heavy roster, but we'll see. We'll see. I know that future contracts come into play also when considering maybe trading for Kevin Durant. Like maybe if you can't pay Wiggins or you don't want to pay Wiggins and you don't want to pay Poole as well, then you just package them and figure out who else needs to be in that package. But, these are all the things going on in my mind, and I'm sure everybody else's mind too, when it comes to Kevin Durant. But that's all I got on that for now. And the rest of the summer, I'll be having episodes with a bunch of guests talking about some fun Warriors stuff and whatever updates come along. So this has been another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at Patrick Epino, Epino. Check us out, Oakland Warriors, and be sure to tell your fellow Warrior fan friends to tune in and listen to the Oakland Warriors podcast. It's produced by National Film Society and is a part of the Basketball Podcast Network. And if you're so inclined, please do leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, and leave us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. All that stuff is always really, really helpful and very, very much appreciated. And that's it. Music in this episode provided by Paper Sun. Special thanks to Paul Amardo for production support. See you next time, and go Dubs.